Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein was fired yesterday by his own film studio. This is after the New York Times wrote a lengthy couple of pieces revealing he'd been repeatedly accused, and credibly accused, of sexual harassment by a lot of different women over the past several decades. Sharon Waxman spent a long time writing for the New York Times. She left to start The Wrap. She says the paper could have revealed Weinstein's alleged misdeeds all the way back in 2004, but spiked the piece instead. Sharon Waxman joins us tonight. Sharon, thanks for coming on. So,
sure.
So to what extent did they have the story, are you saying, in 2004?
Yeah, so first of all, just one nuance, which is I said the piece was gutted, not spiked. The piece did run, but there was no reference to sexual anything or women in the piece. Clearly, the piece that Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey wrote last week was really a great piece of reporting, a lot of work. I had a piece of that story 13 years ago. And I was really very disappointed that we weren't able to get it into print. What appeared in print was a piece that was buried on the inside of the culture section, and it's basically talked about a Miramax executive. Miramax was the company that Harvey and Bob Weinstein had started originally, and it was owned by the Disney company at that time, and it was talked about him being on the payroll but then being fired. And it was kind of a confusing story if you didn't understand that what the role that person actually played was as a procurer for Harvey. That was what my sources had told me. And I'd gone to Rome, I'd gone to Italy to find that story based on tips that I'd gotten, and I convinced my editor at the time to send me. And then a new editor came in, and that editor kind of inherited the story. And what appeared in print, after a great deal of pressure and pushback from Harvey Weinstein, as he always did when there was any negative story in the wings, he pushed back really hard.
Why did nobody write that story subsequently? I mean, it sounds, I knew nothing about this, but it sounds like from all the accounts I've read, this was widely known. Is that true?
I would say that there were always rumors about sexual misconduct. I don't think that anybody knew that there was harassment of any kind inside the company. That was not the reputation, but actresses. There were stories out there, and there were many of us who tried to get them. I, in fact, did speak to one woman who had been paid off on that same trip in London, but she really wouldn't tell me anything that I could publish. So that part of that piece of the story that I got was not in any form, because she, of course, had signed a non-disclosure. She was terrified of saying anything, but yet I knew she existed, but I didn't know exactly what had happened. You know, all I knew that there was a payoff. Certainly nothing that I could put into print. But the other piece of the story that I had reported could have started the conversation, could have exposed a piece of it. And in fact, you know, the story the New York Times ultimately ran goes back 30 years. So you're talking about a lot of past offenses that I think could have been perhaps. I mean, what I wonder is, you know, could some of this, the more recent, you know, things that happened, might any of that have been avoided had the New York Times published what I had in my notebooks 13 years ago?
I mean, I guess it's unknowable, but common sense suggests, of course it could have been avoided. I mean, that's a big forum. If you print a story like that, you know, it has effects. I wish they'd run your piece. Sharon Waxman, thank you for explaining that to us. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Dean Cain is an actor and producer, knows that world really well, and he joins us tonight. Dean, was this story a shock to you?
Not in the least, Tucker. I mean, you hear rumors about this, that, the other thing. This was the worst kept secret in Hollywood. There's no question about it.
I mean, it's hard for me to, I mean, as cynical as I am about the left, it's still hard for me to believe that a community that's constantly talking about empowering women and the horrors of sexual harassment could have it at this scale. This is not like gray area stuff. This is ridiculous, out of control stuff, and not do anything about it for 30 years. But that's what happened.
Well, yeah, Hollywood loves to wave the self-righteous finger and tell everybody what they should be doing and what's going on. But you know, this is not known as the bastion of morality here in Hollywood. People want a leg up Harvey Weinstein is an extremely powerful man, an absolute bully, and he clearly had an MO and something that he did. I mean, you were aware of it. Everybody knew. I wasn't someone that would be a target for him, but, you know, it's something that he had done for a long time. I know him socially. I've seen him in a couple situations. I'm not surprised at all that it's come out. I like to hear that some people are finally saying something. Rose McGowan tweeting, "Women of Hollywood, your silence is deafening." I agree with her, finally, you know, and at least one late-night guy, John Oliver, made a joke, but everyone's been really quiet because Harvey is known to be a fighter. He's going after whoever he can go after, and he'll do it in the most vicious of ways, so people are scared.
Just for our viewers who haven't read the series, and by the way, I think this stuff is usually more complicated than it gets credit for being, but this is not like he pressured a woman to have dinner with him. This is he exposed himself repeatedly to a bunch of different people identified by name for real stuff. So what I don't get is why Saturday Night Live, for example, refused to do any joke about it at all. And then when asked, Lorne Michaels, the executive producer of the show, said it's a New York thing, whatever that means. What does that mean, and why haven't they covered this?
Well, I don't know. I thought President Trump was from New York, and they've done a couple pieces on him. I think the deal is that you know, there needed to be a huge public outcry like this, and there is finally this thing happening. This might be the thing that happens. I mean, his apology letter was ridiculous. That was absolutely ridiculous. Said he's going to fight the NRA now and go do that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. He isn't arguing that things happened, that he did things that were wrong, because there's too many people out there. People sign non-disclosure agreements, and he's done it with legal maneuvering, but there's too many people. The landslide is there. So I think this week you're going to see a whole different world. I think you're going to see Kimmel. I think you're going to see Colbert. They're going to do bits and pieces on it. And I think it's finally going to be out there in the open. And I hope people, I mean, there's such hypocrisy in this to scream about women's rights and all these things. And then, you know, and he is this big, you know, supporter of it. Yet he's doing this. And it's clear, you know, you see the MO. You see what he's doing. Bring him up to the hotel room. Watch me take a shower. It's awful.
So I think the most striking part for me is in his explanation letter. It wasn't exactly an apology letter. He talks mostly about himself and his personal journey and his therapist and working through his issues. And I thought, this is the single most self-involved person I've ever come across. Is that what the culture's like out there, where you just like talk about yourself without ceasing?
Well, let me tell you about me, Tucker. No. Yeah, it's true. It is. It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. That's what happens. People are very self-absorbed out here, and they're worried about their own position and their grasp on power. You know, a lot of actors, boy, if they're not in the spotlight right now, they're forgotten about, and they don't want that to happen. It's the same with producers. You know, Harvey's not a filmmaker. He's a producer. He's not directing films and doing things like that. He's a producer, and he had a lot of power. He could make or break your career, so he just became this power mogul. People would just excuse his behavior because they wanted to get ahead. It's that same old Hollywood story.
Pretty disgusting. Dean Cain, you're a brave man to talk about that in public. Thank you for doing it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tucker.